All right. So, in real terms, how do we reduce demand? What do you do? How do you actually reduce the demand for something? Because it's not as though people want to buy less chicken to eat or less steak to eat or whatever it is, Totino's pizza rolls. It's not like people don't want to have a fancier car or a nicer house or a more beautiful vacation. You can never make people not want those things. So, what you have to do is you have to make those things less affordable, sadly. So while so many people are upset right now and they're struggling, and I get it, I'm one of them, right? I understand. Right now, what's being done to us is done intentionally. You feel squeezed, you're supposed to feel squeezed. And if this wasn't done, if the Federal Reserve did not drive up inflation, costs would become so much that you couldn't afford anything ever again. So what inflation can do is get completely out of control, and it can go through the roof to where your loaf of bread costs $10,000. No, you didn't get a raise at work. Your loaf of bread just cost $10,000. So as a way to control that, the Fed Reserve controls it through interest rates. It increases the rate at which people can borrow, which gives them less money, which gives corporations less money. It gives everybody less money. When it's more expensive to borrow, you have to borrow less, period. And that's how you drive demand. So the pain you're feeling, as crappy as it is, it's on purpose. And believe it or not, it's for the greater good. I know, sucks. Absolutely sucks. So that's what inflation is. It's that simple. You make it more expensive to borrow for banks, which makes it more expensive for you to borrow for yourself, which increases the price of everything, starting wholesale and then getting more expensive as it drips down to retail. All right. So do we have to fear this Great Depression and Great Recession that everybody keeps talking about? In my humble opinion, you have a couple of headwinds. You have the fact that the government has stopped giving out trillions of dollars for COVID relief, right? That was a big driver of this whole economic move that we saw. But it's also the reason that the regional banking sector is in trouble. I mean, the fact that they quit giving away trillions of dollars lowered deposits to a point where now they're creating a banking crisis, which I don't personally believe there is a banking crisis. I have a video up if you want to go watch what I think about the banking crisis. But in any case, the bottom line is this. What has happened is they're not giving away as much money, and interest rates are going up. So housing is coming down. Finally, housing is coming down. Let's face it, a house was nowhere near affordable a year ago. It was ridiculous. Housing prices rose 40% in 2 years. Let me let all of you in on the actual number that housing is supposed to increase year over year, about 4%. It barely exceeds inflation. Real estate is not supposed to be a moneymaker based on capital appreciation. Now, if you're buying houses and you're renting them out, that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother business. It requires a lot of work, contrary to what social media says. That job's a pain in the ass. I would never want to be a landlord. But if you would, by all means, go do it. To me, that sounds miserable and absolutely awful. And it is a full-time job, and it's a nightmare of a full-time job. And a lot of those people now that made bad bets a year ago or 2 years ago, if they don't have a ton of capital behind them, believe me, they're regretting becoming landlords, because right now they don't know how they're going to pay their mortgages. But let's dip back in, because I digressed away from the inflation topic. So when in history have we seen inflation like this? Because that's what you want to do. You want to look at when we saw inflation like this, and then what did the Federal Reserve do about it? And did they do it right, or did they do it wrong? And the most recent time you can look back is the late 70s and early 80s. And what they had to do is they had to control inflation. So they began increasing interest rates. Now, what they did wrong was they did not pull rates down fast enough. So for those of you that don't know this, in the early 80s, you could get a CD at 14% interest. But let me tell you something. These were not the greatest of times. But if you were buying 10-year CDs at 14% while rates were jacked up, oh, were you happy in 86, 87, 88, 89? If you could get those CDs out as far as you could get them, and you got them at 13 and 14%, oh, were you happy? So that's the first little bit of financial advice not advice, my personal opinion. I shouldn't use the word advice. But my personal opinion is right now on this paper that the interest rates are so high on. If you're a conservative investor and you want to buy paper right now at high interest rates and you can get those rates, by all means do it. They're nowhere near the early 80s and they shouldn't be. And we hope they never get there. Because if those rates stay up like that, that will drive us. Because what happens when rates rise? We get broker. If rates goes that high, we can't handle it. We're not the generation of the late 70s and early 80s. Do you know that in 1976, the average American had a salary of $40,000? And to replicate that same $40,000 salary today, you'd need to make over $300,000 a year. You heard that right. In the mid 70s, if you had a salary of $40,000 right now to live that same lifestyle, you'd have to make over $300,000. You see, people back then were in far more of a position to handle inflation than we are. They had to just cut out a couple of vacations, not buy a couple of new cars. If you do that nowadays with the average person earning a little less than $70,000 a year, we will fall into a Great Depression. Do I think Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, understands this? Are you kidding me? Of course he understands this. So how does he remedy the problem? Well, he's going to have to take us right to the brink, and he may have to do it a couple of times, sadly. So this may go on where rates rise, we go broke, and then inflation isn't controlled, and he does it again and brings it back and does it again and brings it back. He's not going to let it run out of control because we will fall into a Great Depression. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. So this is what I believe. And if you look at the chart behind me, what that chart is telling you is that in the next 12 months, we're looking at a rate drop of about 2%. Do I think that that is plausible? Absolutely. Do I think that's probable? Absolutely. People are feeling the squeeze pretty bad about now. We go another quarter or two like this, I absolutely believe that rates could come down 2% very, very quickly, which should then increase demand, drive prices up because you'll be able to buy things. And hopefully at that point, those trillions of dollars they flooded the market with in 2021 have been cleaned up. If they haven't, we're going to take this ride again. You can bet your bottom dollar we're going to take this ride again. So when will this end? Well, you can't say for sure when this will end, but what you can do is have comfort in knowing the process that's got to be taken and why that process has to happen. I hope this explained it to you. I try to keep things as simple as possible. One, I'm a simple dude, right? I don't dig into stuff too heavily. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I just look at history. I look at our situation now, what I've learned from that history, and what I hope our leaders have certainly learned from that history. And I would say that Powell has been right on track with everything he's been doing. So I do believe he's aware of what's going on. And I believe that we are going to come out of this. I don't know that it's exactly fun to be broke and then have money and then be broke and have money, because that would be my assumption of the way this goes. But we'll live through it, and it'll be a much smoother landing than a Great Depression, which is another way of getting us out of this. We certainly don't want that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, or if you have any questions, ask away. Happy to answer. All right. Thanks for watching.